Bonnie Emily Brown Heady spent just 81 days on death row. Her fate sealed with chilling speed. But to understand how she ended up in Missouri's gas chamber, we need to rewind to the roots of a life that spiraled into infamy. Please take a second to like and subscribe, to be part of our growing community, and drop a comment, telling us where you're tuning in from. Bonnie Emily Brown Heady was born on July 15, 1912, in St. Joseph, Missouri. A small city along the Missouri River, where life moved slowly for most. Her father, a prosperous farmer, provided a comfortable upbringing, far from the poverty that plagued many during the Great Depression. Bonnie's family wasn't rich, but they had enough land, a sturdy home, food on the table. Her mother, a quiet woman, kept the household running, while her father's success in farming gave Bonnie a taste of stability that many envied. Yet beneath this seemingly normal life, cracks were forming. As a young girl, Bonnie was charming and lively, with auburn hair and a bubbly personality that drew people in. She was short, about 5'1", and often complimented on her shapely legs. But her weight was a source of insecurity, something she carried into adulthood. School records show she was bright, but restless. She attended local schools in St. Joseph, earning decent grades. But her teenage years hinted at trouble. She wasn't a thief or a fighter, but she craved attention, often sneaking out to local taverns, drawn to the thrill of nightlife. What was it about those smoky rooms that pulled her in? Was it escape, rebellion, or something deeper? Her home life wasn't perfect. There's no clear record of abuse, but her relationship with her parents grew strained as she got older. Her father, strict and focused on his farm, didn't understand her restless spirit. By her late teens, she was drifting away from the good girl her family raised her to be. She married young, to a man whose name is lost to most records. But the marriage crumbled quickly. Some say he was a bank robber, a shadowy figure who introduced Bonnie to a rougher crowd. Others claim he was just a local nobody who couldn't keep up with her wild streak. Either way, by her early 20s, Bonnie was divorced, living alone in St. Joseph, and slipping into a life of heavy drinking, and occasional prostitution. How did a farmer's daughter fall so far? By the 1940s, Bonnie's life was a blur. A haze of whiskey and bad choices. She was known in St. Joseph's taverns as a woman who could hold her own. She charmed men with her wit, but snapped quickly if crossed. Her home, modest, at 1201 South 38th Street, became a hub for wild parties. She'd entertain men for money, or just for company. It was here, in 1951, that she met Carl Austin Hall, a paroled convict with big dreams, and a dark past. Their meeting would set her on a path to one of Missouri's most notorious crimes. But what was it about Carl that made Bonnie say yes to his deadly plan? Robert Cosgrove Greenlease Jr., known as Bobby, was a bright-eyed 6-year-old with a contagious smile. He lived a life of comfort in Kansas City, Missouri. Born on February 3, 1947, to Robert Greenlease Sr., a wealthy Cadillac dealer, and Virginia Greenlease, his second wife. Bobby grew up in a world of privilege. The Greenlease family lived in a spacious home, surrounded by the trappings of success. Fancy cars, private schools, a tight-knit community. Bobby was the youngest of 2 children, with an adopted older brother, Paul Robert Greenlease. Despite their wealth, Bobby's parents were devoted, ensuring he felt loved, not spoiled. Bobby was curious, always asking questions, his small hands clutching books or toys as he explored the world. At Notre Dame de Chauen, a Catholic preschool in Kansas City's Hyde Park, he was known for his kindness. He shared snacks with classmates, and giggled during story time. What made Bobby human was his innocence. He trusted everyone, never imagining someone could hurt him. How could such a gentle soul become the target of a heartless crime? Bobby's path crossed with Bonnie Brown Heady and Carl Austin Hall, Not by chance, but through a calculated plan. Carl, a former classmate of Bobby's brother Paul, at Kemper Military School in the 1930s, had long envied the Greenlease family's wealth, after squandering his own inheritance, and serving time for robbery. Carl saw the Greenleases as his ticket to a fortune. He needed an accomplice. Bonnie, his new lover, was eager to join. They targeted Bobby, the youngest, the most vulnerable, knowing his father's millions would guarantee a massive ransom. On September 28, 1953, Bonnie walked into Notre Dame de Chaune, posing as Bobby's aunt. She spun a lie, that his mother had suffered a heart attack. She convinced Sister Morin to release him. Bobby, trusting and obedient, took her hand, and followed her to a waiting taxi. Why didn't anyone question her story? That crisp September morning in 1953, Bonnie Heady and Carl Hall executed a plan, driven by greed. After Bonnie collected Bobby from the school, they drove him across state lines, to a wheat field in Overland Park, Kansas. About 10 miles from Kansas City, the taxi driver, John Oliver Hager, dropped them off, unaware of their intentions. In that isolated field, Carl's plan took a brutal turn. He intended to kidnap Bobby for ransom. But instead, he decided to kill him immediately. Ensuring there would be no witnesses, Carl first tried to strangle Bobby with a rope. But the boy fought back, kicking and crying. Frustrated, Carl threw the rope aside, pulled out a .38 caliber snub-nosed Smith & Wesson revolver, and shot Bobby twice in the head. The 6-year-old's life ended in that lonely field, his body crumpling to the ground. Why did Carl choose murder over mercy? With Bobby dead, Carl and Bonnie drove his body 45 miles back to St. Joseph, Missouri, to Bonnie's home at 1201 South 38th Street. There, in her backyard, they dug a shallow grave near the porch. They wrapped Bobby's body in a plastic bag, poured lime over it to mask the smell, and planted flowers on top, a chilling cover for their crime. Meanwhile, they began their ransom scheme, pretending Bobby was alive. Starting that evening, they sent letters and made phone calls to the Greenlease family, demanding $600,000. The largest ransom in U.S. history at the time. Robert Greenlease Sr., desperate to save his son, followed their instructions. He worked with Arthur Eisenhower, a banker and brother of President Dwight Eisenhower, to gather the money in tens and twenties, recording the serial numbers. On October 5, 1953, Carl collected the duffel bag of cash at a bridge 10 miles east of Kansas City. Under FBI surveillance, he didn't detect. Why did they think they could outsmart the law? The investigation moved fast, driven by the FBI and Kansas City police. It began just hours after Bonnie took Bobby from the school. A nun, suspicious about the heart attack story, called St. Mary's Hospital, and learned it was a lie. She alerted the Greenlease family, who contacted the FBI. The case exploded into a federal matter, because Bobby had been taken across state lines. The first clue came from the taxi driver, John Oliver Hager. He described Bonnie's appearance and behavior, giving police a starting point. Meanwhile, ransom calls and letters kept coming. Carl's voice slurred from drinking, demanding the $600,000. The FBI traced the calls and letters, narrowing the search to St. Joseph, Missouri, where Bonnie lived. By October 5, the ransom was paid. But Carl and Bonnie fled to St. Louis, about 380 miles away. Carl's reckless spending became their downfall. He hired a cab driver, Willard Pearson Creech, as a personal chauffeur, flashing stacks of cash at bars and the Coral Court Motel. Creech's boss, Joe Costello, a rumored mob associate, grew suspicious, and tipped off the St. Louis police. On October 6, 1953, Lieutenant Louis Ira Shoulders and Patrolman Elmer Dolan arrested Carl at the motel. He was found with 2 metal suitcases, but only $296,280 of the ransom money. Over half was missing. Where did it go? Bonnie, drunk and bruised from Carl's fists, was found and arrested in St. Louis. Carl had left her in a rented apartment with just $2,000, keeping most of the $600,000 for himself. She claimed she saw a bundle in Carl's car, but didn't know it was Bobby. The FBI searched Bonnie's home in St. Joseph on October 7, finding Bobby's body in her backyard flower bed, wrapped in plastic. Lime poured over it. Bloodstains on her basement floor and steps. Plus 38 caliber shell casings, matched Carl's Smith & Wesson revolver. The bullet in Bonnie's station wagon confirmed the murder weapon. Carl initially blamed a fictional, Tom Marsh, for Bobby's death. But on October 11, he confessed. Marsh didn't exist. Bonnie also confessed to her role but denied pulling the trigger. Their guilty pleas, on October 30, sealed their fate. After a trial lasting just days, a jury deliberated for 1 hour and 8 minutes. On November 19, 1953, they recommended death for both. The judge called it the most cold-blooded, brutal murder he had ever seen. Why didn't they appeal? Bonnie Brown Heady and Carl Hall spent their final 81 days at the Missouri State Penitentiary in Jefferson City. A grim fortress of stone and steel. The death row cells were small, cold, and dimly lit, with bars separating them from a narrow corridor. Bonnie and Carl, housed close to each other, faced the gas chamber's shadow daily. Bonnie stayed calm, almost defiant. She often joked with guards, showing little remorse. She fussed over Carl, worried about his nerves, and even asked to marry him before their execution. The warden denied the request. She also asked for a second chair in the gas chamber, so they could die together. That was granted. And on her final day, she wore her favorite green dress. Did she truly love Carl? Or was it her way of controlling him to the end? Carl, on the other hand, unraveled. He broke down often, trembling as the execution date neared. He spoke of alcohol ruining his life, but showed no genuine sorrow for Bobby's death. Neither Carl nor Bonnie sought religion. Neither filed appeals. They accepted their fate, with eerie resignation. On December 18, 1953, Bonnie Brown Heady and Carl Austin Hall faced their final day at Missouri State Penitentiary. The morning began quietly. The prison was under tight security, due to the high-profile case. Bonnie woke early in her small death row cell, combed her auburn hair, and slipped into her green dress, the same one she wore when she took Bobby's life. She spent the morning writing a letter to her mother. Its contents were never shared publicly. Carl, in a nearby cell, was restless. He paced. He chain-smoked cigarettes. He shook. A Catholic priest visited them around 10 a.m., offering prayers. Neither showed interest. No family came to see Bonnie. Her parents, ashamed of her actions, stayed away. Carl's sister, Virginia Hall, made a brief visit. She left him in tears, after a hushed conversation. What did she say to him in those final moments? For their last meal, served at 5 p.m., Bonnie and Carl requested fried chicken, mashed potatoes with gravy, green beans, and ice cream for dessert. They ate together, outside Carl's cell. A rare moment of calm. Bonnie laughed softly, leaving a lipstick mark on Carl's cheek as they finished. By 6:30 p.m., guards escorted them to the execution chamber. A small, hexagonal room, with a green gas chamber at its center. As they were strapped into the steel chairs, side by side, Bonnie held Carl's hand. Her face, calm, but pale. Carl's hands trembled. His eyes darted to the 12 witnesses gathered behind a glass window. FBI agents, prison officials, silent observers. Bobby Greenlease's parents were not there. They spared themselves the sight. What went through Bonnie's mind as she sat next to the man who led her to this fate? The execution method was cyanide gas. At 6:45 p.m., the executioner released sodium cyanide pellets into a bucket of sulfuric acid beneath the chairs, producing a deadly cloud. Bonnie's last words, spoken softly to Carl, were, "I'm right here with you." Carl, struggling to speak, muttered, "I'm sorry." It was unclear if he meant it for Bobby, or himself. The gas rose. And within minutes, both were unconscious. They were pronounced dead at 6:52 p.m. Bonnie, at age 41. Carl, at 34. The chamber was sealed for hours to clear the gas. A solemn end, to a crime that shocked the nation. Did their final act of unity mean they felt no regret for Bobby's life? Bonnie Brown Heady and Carl Hull's swift journey from crime to execution left a scar on history. A reminder of greed's devastating cost. Bobby Greenlease's life was stolen. And his family's pain endures. What do you think drives someone to commit such a heartless act? Desperation? Loyalty? Or something darker? Share your thoughts below.